Last time around, we were talking about some brilliant payoffs in the book of Nehemiah. Both the guy and the book named after him are really, really good at this. Just some great stuff. At the end of the story part, the narrative part of the Old Testament is happening here, where there are points of tension that the reader who just went through the whole Bible is going to be feeling as you get to the end of this chunk. And Nehemiah is doing a great job of coming back to several of those points and being like, hey, if you remembered that this was hanging out there, here's a payoff on that. And if you contrast this thing right here with this thing that happened back here a little ways, it's going to feel a lot more complete. Like we've got more direction now here with this payoff that we're getting. And I'm being a little bit coy about it because I want to explain the whole thing here in just a minute. So if you haven't listened to the last episode, that's the first half of this conversation, maybe go catch that, or maybe don't, because it's the internet and do whatever you want. And then we're just going to jump in with where we left off last time around right now. I'll have my buddy Jeff play some music and we'll get after it. So we see that hint of it way back there, but then we see that nodded to again in Nehemiah chapter 8 when the reading of the law occurs again, a direct echo of Joshua chapter 8. It says, okay, they're gathered, they're around the water gate. He read it aloud, Nehemiah 8:3, from daybreak till noon as he faced the square before the water gate in the presence of the men. Okay, obviously, it's an ancient document. Of course, the men are going to be mentioned, but also women and others who could understand. And all the people listened attentively to the book of the law. The text goes out of the way to say that the women and presumably the children, and really anybody who was old enough or capable of understanding the language was there. And they were a part of the thing, and it mattered. The end of this reading of the law passage in Nehemiah 8, verse 8, they read from the book of the law of God, making it clear and giving the meaning so that the people could understand what was being read. This isn't just for the fancies. This isn't just performative. It's meant for everybody to get it. Now we're back to the dedication of the wall that we've been looking at. Nehemiah 12, verse 43, once again. And on that day they offered great sacrifices, rejoicing because God had given them great joy. The women and children also rejoiced. That, to you and me, is going to sound like, well, that's not nearly enough. They should have said more about the women. This is a sexist document. But oh my goodness, we've got to be reasonable here and think about this in its historical context. It's wild that they would even mention the women at this point in history. At this point in time, it was more than sufficient to just say the name of the man who represents the household or the head of the extended family, and that covers everybody. And for the most part, it seems like everybody was just cool with that. That's how things were. It is so forward-looking, so anticipatory of the new family of faith established by Christ in the New Testament to even mention the women who Jesus was happy to associate with when other people would not, to even mention the little children who some tried to brush off and dismiss, but Jesus said, let the little children come to me. Jesus said that if you want to get this stuff right, have a heart, have faith like a little child. These are not throwaway lines. It's great planning on the part of Nehemiah, and it's great writing to include this detail to pay off a subtle motif, but one that is there and that is important throughout the Old Testament. And obviously, we're celebrating the theological implications and how awesome all of that is. But additionally, I think it's okay to just nod at this and be like, it's really good writing. You did a good job remembering what you were working on and carrying this through line through the whole text. Wonderful. But now here's the payoff that I think we can cover very quickly, but that I think is just awesome. So the women and the children are rejoicing. Everybody's rejoicing. Everybody's singing. The walls are dedicated. They're getting it right here. This is a great celebration and a great payoff. And the sound of rejoicing in Jerusalem could be heard far away. Here's some more great writing. Here's another great payoff. Here's another character arc, even if it is a character arc of all the people at once, that is being paid off. Do you remember back in Ezra when they dedicated that foundation of the temple? And it wasn't a great foundation dedication ceremony. Zerubbabel, who oversaw the rebuilding of the temple in the 530s, 520s, I think he was a great leader, but I don't think he was as good at event planning as Nehemiah. I don't think there's any other way to slice it. The text presents Zerubbabel's celebration of the laying of the foundation of the temple as being not as well put together as Nehemiah's dedication of the walls 80, 90 years later, whatever it is. Here's how that goes in Ezra 3. When the builders laid the foundation of the temple of the Lord, the priests in their vestments and with trumpets and the Levites, the sons of Asaph, with cymbals, took their places to praise the Lord as prescribed by David, king of Israel. With praise and thanksgiving, they sang to the Lord, "He is good, his love endures forever." I mean, this is all very good. And all the people gave a great shout of praise to the Lord because the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid. Okay, sounds like everybody's putting on a brave face and trying to appreciate the progress. Verse 12, but many of the older priests and Levites and family heads who had seen the former temple wept aloud when they saw the foundation of this temple being laid, while many others shouted for joy. No one could distinguish the sounds of the shouts of joy from the sound of weeping, because the people made so much noise, and the sound was heard far away. I'm telling you, this Ezra and Nehemiah stuff, it's good writing. There's a loose end there. There's a sadness. Things aren't right still, and maybe the kids can get excited because they've never seen anything like this, but the old people know it isn't fixed. It isn't rebuilt. What ails us is still broken. It's still screwed up. This foundation is nice, but the fact that it's a fraction of what the old temple footprint was is just a metaphor in front of us for where we've been and what we had and what we screwed up and where we are now. And we get a picture at that celebration 80, 90 years earlier under Zerubbabel of confusion, people not knowing how to feel. There isn't clarity. There isn't total unity on this thing yet. But that gets paid off right here in Nehemiah 12 with all of the men and the women and the children and the priests and the governor and everybody's there. And there is no ambiguity about how they feel now. There's unity. There's clarity. The stuff that needed to be dealt with the soul of the people has been dealt with as best as they can. Will they be able to keep it for more than one generation? Yeah, that's tough. But this generation's doing their very best with the very best of their leadership. And again, there's no ambiguity about how they felt. The sound of rejoicing in Jerusalem could be heard far away. It's an exact echo of the language of Ezra 3 in that disappointing temple foundation dedication ceremony where a mixed cacophony of crying and celebration and confusion could be heard far away. The message to the surrounding people coming out of that was one of not clarity. That's a tough deal because the job of the descendants of Abraham, according to the Old Testament, are to take the people by the hand and be a blessing to the nations, to show them how to worship the one true God. Now, there's more clarity on that. And now the message is way clearer to the people outside the walls, to the neighboring people. And that's just a dang good payoff, even though it comes and goes in just a fraction of one little verse here in Nehemiah chapter 12. Bottom line, Fly Me to the Moon was a nice movie, and you might enjoy it as a family, even though Woody Harrelson says the F word real loud at one point. Also, it was flawed, and if you see it, you're going to know exactly what I'm talking about, where they just forgot the through line, and they just burned a character. They screwed up a character's arc really badly because they just forgot, and it's not perfect writing. By contrast, Nehemiah just keeps paying off, and I think it's okay from time to time to stop and appreciate that from a literary perspective, but also to appreciate that from a thematic perspective, because the Bible is more about just appreciating how good the books are. I mean, that's a lot of fun, but this has implications for the reader, and these are good implications. All right, I think that's plenty for now. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.